This is Dr. Tami Dean, and you are listening to the Equity Hour podcast. I am so excited to be here with you today. My goal is that as a listener, you leave with new ideas, resources, and actionable steps for your educational community. Let's explore how we can use our voices for equity and social justice today. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Equity Hour. I am so excited you are here with us today, and I am super pumped to introduce our guest for our episode today. I have with me Julye Williams, and Julye is a visionary founder of the Project 2043 Institute, a U.S.-based organization dedicated to preparing organizations for an inclusive, equitable, and diverse multiracial society. With a career rooted in education and program development, Julye co-founded an elementary school and a nonprofit impacting thousands of teachers and students. Her motto, "Don't ever be afraid to go out on a limb. That's where the fruit is," reflects her commitment to making a difference across industries. Julye, I'm so excited. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
I am so happy to be here. Like, you've done so many things. Like, this is just amazing.
The way life's journey, you just never can really predict it, I said.
Absolutely. But I love that, right? Don't be afraid to go out on a limb. Like, that's where the fruit is. I love that. That reminds me of that take the first step even in fear, even though if you're not quite sure what I'm doing, like it's along those same lines. But I like this idea of the fruit, right? Because, you plant a seed and then the fruit grows and all this stuff. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I'm feeling that. I'm feeling that. I'm going to steal that. I'm going to be like, my friend Julye, this is her motto. And I love it. I love it. Okay. So excited to talk about all the great things that you do. I want to dive into Project 2043 in just a minute, but as you know, we always start each episode where everyone gets to share a little bit around their personal equity and social justice journey. And I know this is my philosophy, that this is a marathon and it's a constant process. And I know you feel the same. And so I really like us to share that, to just kind of show that we are all in this process together, and it's not always looking the same for everyone from person to person. So I would love to hear a little bit about your journey.
Yeah. So I can share, I'll try to keep my, what can be a very long story, brief.
I feel that.
So I went to Florida A&M University, and when I graduated, I took a position in pharma. I was working in the pharma industry in marketing, and they were making a whole lot of money, of course. And one year, three gentlemen, they wrote the book, The Pact. They called themselves the Three Doctors. They came and spoke to the Black Employee Alliance. And they talked about their childhood growing up in Newark during the crack epidemic. Mm-hmm. And they talked about how children in their home city didn't know what a project manager was, or how they didn't know that you could be a nurse and not work in a hospital. They talked about, their goal as children was to be the manager at McDonald's because that's who they saw.
Oh, yeah.
And when I heard that, they challenged everyone in the room. They said, you've got to be more visible. Children don't know you exist. They don't know your life is even a possibility. And so it just resonated so deeply with me that I ultimately found my way to joining an educational startup in New York City, where I was able to work with schools and set up after-school tutoring programs, and, just really got a leap into, how could I be more visible? How could I, do something that can help support, children who don't know the life that's so normal to me at the time was even possible. So I would say that's kind of how my journey started. And of course, once I got to New York and started working in public schools, and I saw a whole lot of inequity. And so I was like, oh, okay, yeah, this is where I'm gonna go out on that limb and try to find and try to make a difference.
Oh my gosh. That's so powerful, right? That the representation matters, and being able to see the possibility of what is possible, right? Like beyond the scope of what you've ever known. And I think that that is so important. And for me, that even ties back to not only the visibility of people doing the work right now, but the texts and books that we allow to be available or that get published and get written. Like, while I'm super not happy about the book bans that have been happening, I am hopeful in the trajectory of what I've been seeing coming out, like in children's literature and, you know, young adult and middle grades. Like, there's just such a better representation. Like, I'm seeing this shift from when, like, I started as an educator, and I know those things certainly didn't really exist when I was a kid. I can tell you.
Yes.
I can tell you that
Agreed,
much.
1,000%. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's so powerful because I think it speaks to just being who you are can help contribute to social justice and equity work,
Yeah.
because you can just your presence and sharing what you do. As I think sometimes people think it has to be a super big, you know, process or a big thing, but really it can be as simple as that, and getting involved and being visible in your community and with
Absolutely.
students. Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I'm really excited to talk about this project 2043 because I mean, I heard a little bit when I met you in Philly, and so just I think people are going to be surprised. But I want to know kind of like what you're laughing because you know, like they are, and it's great what's coming. So I know you did a number of things, but like what led you to really build the 2043 organization?
Mhm. So it started when I saw a Census Bureau projection many years ago, probably well over a decade ago. And it said that it was a report, and it basically said that the U.S. Census Bureau projects that by the year 2043, the majority of people living in the United States will identify as people of color.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw that. Now, for background or for context, I was leading, by that time I had really gotten into education. So I had co-founded an elementary school, leading it in Newark, New Jersey. And I saw that report, and it just made me think about my kindergartners. And what would the world be like for them when they reached adulthood?
Mm-hmm.
Would they be, would they live in a world where so many of these historical inequities had been addressed? Would things just be more further entrenched? And it just really got me on this, this thought train of, well, what does that mean? Like, this is never happening in the United States in terms of, becoming a country without or with the majority of the majority being people of color. And so I started to do. I ended up leaving the school,
Mm-hmm.
fortunately because of burnout. And so I joined a nonprofit in DC where I was able to do a lot of work in discussing and helping educators learn about how to create inclusive school spaces and
Mm-hmm.
school homes that are equitable. And so I started to do a lot more of that work, and then soon realized, it's not just school that need this type of support and education and guidance. And so that's when Project 2043 really took off as a way to support not only schools, but organizations across the board that are intentional about creating inclusive spaces.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, and I think that word intentional is really important because I know I often see a lot of performative type work because that intentionality is missing. And
Mhm.
so when we say intentional, what does that look like for the organization to you?
Well, it looks like a internal reflection on where they are.
Mm,
And it looks like a commitment to taking action to get to a future point. and the acknowledgement that it's not a one and done anything, that it's,
Yeah.
and when I see that, I get excited because there's so much more to creating an inclusive space than, I was talking to a friend yesterday and, about, so many things that people do. For example, food, right? Like a food diversity day, or,
Uh-huh.
things along those lines. And it's like, yeah, that's great. It's, not knocking it at all. But when we think about creating an inclusive workplace, it is far more than sharing cuisine. And so I do get excited when organizations are at that point, and ready to, to take action. And typically they come to me when they're like, okay, we just had an assessment, or we know we've got things to work on. How can you help us get to the next point? Or
Mm.
what might be the next, several points we need to consider as our milestones on the way to this journey, and can you help us get there? So those are the types of clients I just truly enjoy working with.
Oh, absolutely. So what I hear you saying, right? So we're moving beyond this very surface level around what is inclusivity, which again is great as long as we're, not narrowing people down to a stereotype, right? I just got to throw that caveat out there. But this awareness that I hear you saying these people are coming to you with, like an acknowledgement of we're not doing it completely right. We want to do better. We're investing in going to make that better. And investment to me is like you're talking about, it's not a one and done. So that's time.
Yep.
It sounds like financial investment, right? And I would guess, you didn't say this, but I'm guessing that it's the leaders of this organization that are coming. So the people that are able to put the change in place are the ones coming and asking these questions to you.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's part of their strategy.
Ooh, that makes me excited. Like for real, like because it really does. There's so much possibility for growth when you're willing to admit that there are things, there's no expectation that you're doing everything right, but when you can admit and have an awareness around opportunities for growth, like the doors just open to possibilities for you as well as the people within your organization.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And people talk a lot about this sense of, belonging. And this is how you do that, because you get an awareness of the value of the individuality that everyone brings to the table versus a sense of belonging being you fit in this box of what we believe everyone in this organization is supposed to look like.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I was just talking with another guest the other day, and she was saying you could be in a space that celebrates who you are versus punishing you for who you are.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's super powerful.
Yeah.
So
It reminds me of this quote I saw, and these are not my words, and I cannot remember the name of the person who said it, but it was along the lines of, there's a difference in saying you are welcome versus this was designed with you in mind.
Oh,
right.
Absolutely.
And I think a lot of times the tendency can be to say, oh, well, everybody's welcome. But there's a difference between saying you're welcome here versus, no, we actually designed this so that you would feel included, so that people, no matter their identity, would feel included. That's a different intentionality. It's a different, I think, state of mind to create those types of spaces.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. And when we think about the end of the majority coming, right, in 2043, how does that fact influence some of the work you do with these organizations? Interested in learning more and getting a customized plan for you or your educators? Sign up for a free connection call with me, Dr. Tami, to discuss your personalized plan. The link is in the show notes.
Well, oh, great. I love that question. So it influences my work in several ways. So one of the things I often talk about is changing demographics.
Mm-hmm.
Why are demographics changing? Where are we seeing the greatest changes? And so if we look across, and this is specific to race. However, there are many other aspects to having an inclusive society, many other characteristics that we have that are incredibly important to producing that. And so one of the things that I talk about is the impact these demographic shifts are going to have on what I see are three areas. I think it's going to impact our staff. So will we hire the people who are on our teams who are delivering the work, right? We could look at Gen Z Gen Z right now and, Gen Alpha coming after. I think Gen Z, if I'm not mistaken, is the last generation to have any group in the racial majority, to have any racial group in the majority. After that, but we're looking at Gen Alpha, there will not be any racial group in the majority for that coming generation.
Wow.
And that's basically people 11 years old and younger.
Okay.
The newest generation. So there's the staff. So who's going to be delivering the work, right? What does that look like in terms of an inclusive workplace for folks across identities? Then there are the services and the products that we're producing. So if, how well are we taking into account the needs of the community when we have various services? Are they going to meet the needs of a diverse community, a more diverse community? And then we look at the staff, the service, and then the consumers. So who is going to be buying these products? Who is going to be, purchasing these services? And one great example I often give is that within the theater industry. So theater historically has been predominantly the patrons have predominantly been older and white in the theater industry. And I have several theater clients who know that's not a strategy for longevity, right?
Right.
You got to do something. You're trying to be here in another 50 years, right? So now I think we're starting to see theaters really, really zero in on their services and, their offerings. So what types of performances and plays are they producing? Who's writing them? Who's acting in them? Who are the patrons? Who are funding this work? And then also who is in their staff that is helping to create experiences that are, engaging to audiences that they may not have really focused on in the past. And so that's just kind of one thing that I get really excited about as we talk about changing demographics for organizations is really looking at, okay, well, who's going to be doing the work? What are we offering? And then who's going to be buying this? And I think we need to look at that through a lens of how do the identities of the people today, how might that compare 20 years from now?
Yeah.
And are the same things we're doing today going to be desirable for people with such a different makeup of our society? I think there's going to be some changes needed.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think that's what society does, right? It evolves. And if it doesn't evolve, you get lost. It makes me think of, gosh, I don't even know if this is a great example, but you know how Blockbuster went under, right? Because they didn't, was it Netflix, I think, that like, because Netflix, right? Like I used to get the DVDs in the mail, like that's how they started out. And then it became streaming and they're like, oh, that's never going to stick, right? And then where's Blockbuster? I mean, there's that one like
In
iconic
Alaska?
one, like, yeah, or wherever it is. I think I watched a documentary on that. But to me, that's right. Like that's that same thing. Or when I talk with I talk with educators about what is the way that people need to think. And I work a lot with literacy and literacy educators, and they get stuck on, well, kids need dictionary skills. I'm like, do they though? Yeah, look at your face. See, exactly. I'm like, when is the last time you opened a dictionary?
Right.
You don't open a dictionary anymore. Nobody opens a dictionary anymore. You type it into the virtual dictionary. That's a different skill set, and it's okay. Let it go. God, I'm going to sound really old right now when I say this. I wrote my college applications on a typtypewriter, like an electric typewriter, right? Like I had to type it into the document.
Yeah.
I appreciate that you know what I'm saying.
I did the same.
Right? They're like, you did what? I was like, look, just look, in my heart, I'm still like 24, you know? But we need to shift and think about how can we use these changes in positive ways to come together as a community, as an organization, as a whatever it is, and value the people that are there. But I see this tension, right, already, and I'm sure you do with the work you do. Like I see it in schools, I see it in companies, right? Like there's this push between, well, this is what we've always done, and people are asking, you know, why? But why? Like that doesn't make any sense. And so when I hear you talking about the three things you think about, to me that's strategic, and it's strategy, and it's being intentional, which just speaks to my love language because I'm such a strategy systems girl. Like I'll be like, but why? That doesn't make any sense. So this might be a good place because I know you've done some work with the multi-generational workforce too, right? Because I'm just thinking about some of these questions people are asking. They're like, do I need to sit at my desk from 9 to 5 if I've already got my work done? So let's talk a little bit about that because, you know, I feel like some generations are getting a really bad rap, and I don't know that they should be. I think they're asking some great questions.
Yeah. That's so interesting. I was gonna bring that up because I think that, you know, that holding on, like going back to Blockbuster, like holding on, we're gonna be the best VHS company ever. Okay, you do that, right? But we're moving on. And, you know, we think about multi-generational workplaces, you know, I often, you know, talk about there right now, 4 generations in the workplace. You've got baby boomers, who were, you know, honestly, you know, who came of age during the civil rights era, right? There was still Jim Crow laws in effect when many of them were growing up. They, you know, experienced television was their big technological revolution, and seeing the world beyond their neighborhood. And, you know, so that was big for the baby boomers who experienced this concept of you had to earn the right to contribute when they were working, right? Like you couldn't just walk in with an idea. No, you had to earn the right to contribute. And that's kind of the mentality and the experience that many have had in that generation. You've got Gen X. I'm Gen X, right? We're Gen X. Yep. And so, you know, high independence, right? Latchkey kids. We were left home, told to go outside, like a whole lot of independence in terms of being resilient.
A whole lot.
Figure it out is what we did.
Absolutely.
And that's just what it was. And, you know, and being in between this analog and early digital era, right? I remember getting my first email address. I was in high school, right? So, you know, just, you know, that kind of attitude of a lot of Gen X is, you know, you figure it out and you just get it done. And then you have millennials who were the digital natives and who experienced helicopter parents, right? Where the millennials were the center of the family. Everything revolved around their upbringing for many of them, right? Not every, of course, but, you know, their self-esteem and their confidence, all these things were highly cultivated. And so when they come to the workplace, that's what they know. So why am I not getting, but why didn't you, you know, where's my feedback? And the compliment. Like that's because that's what they grew up with. And then you have Gen Z, who, is the youngest group in the workplace, who has grown up seeing people, make millions on TikTok, on YouTube. So this whole idea of, you can work somewhere for 30 years is like, what? That doesn't make any sense. And so you've got all these generations now in the workplace, and, it's like, well, the way we've always done it, but why?
Right?
Well, just because I'm asking why doesn't mean it's, I actually really want to know, because the way I just got out of school and my project allowed me to do A, B, and C. And so why are we still doing it this way here? So, the need for these generations to come together and really see each other as, from an asset-based lens, as opposed to a threat, I think is really important, because what we see is when people come together, you need folks from different perspectives to really make something thrive. Like you benefit when you have that diversity of thought. It's just, how do we come together when so much of our, worldview has been informed by our upbringing, right? And so that's one of the big challenges with the multi-generational workplace.
Oh, yeah, I can see that, because I think a lot of times, depending on which generation you are, the question of why for understanding gets seen as challenging or combative, rather than a question about help me understand so I can, think about it and process that. And, and quite honestly, if it doesn't make sense, I'm going to say, well, that doesn't make sense. Right? And that's interesting, because when you talk about independence, and I'll just talk about myself here because I'm a Gen Xer and I have a team and I lead a team, and, that idea of independence, right? I'm like, y'all got, like, I am not a micromanager, right? At all, because I'm like, y'all got it. Now, I will help. I will assist. I will collaborate. I will do all of those things if you need it. But I'm going to need you to tell me you need it. Like, I can notice when they're a little, when I'm like, ooh, are you okay? Like, I can notice those things. But I'm not a micromanager, where I feel like I've been in spaces where maybe the baby be a little bit micromanaging, like, tell me everything you did. I need to check everything. I'm like, you're like, wait, what? Like, you hired me, like, well, at least my perspective is, I'm like, you hired me to do a whole job because of my experience and criteria. So I'm going to need you to let me do that. Like that independence part. Like, I'm just now clicking for me that I'm like, you said you liked X, Y, and Z about what I do. I do that because I'm highly independent and self-sufficient and functional. So I'm going to need you to let me do that, because you trying to check in on me like every 0.5 seconds, it doesn't work for me.
And then contrast that with, a millennial who is looking for the feedback, right? Who's like, am I on the right track? If it's right, tell me, and if someone is distant, then they're kind of like, well, I don't know how I'm doing. And, so it's like, but those are different things that we just got to be able to talk about.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Now, if you want me to look at them and give you feedback, I am happy to do that, but I don't have to. Oh my gosh.
Right.
Oh, but I think, oh gosh, there's so much value of that. Like, and you think about I think about the layering, right? The layering of the diversity and the inclusion, and then the generational experiences and expectations for the different generations. Humans are just so complex, right? And I think that's one of the most important things as we think about building inclusivity and social justice, is when we try to isolate or narrow things down into a very simplistic way, we miss the nuance and the complexity that's so important and essential to really including someone and seeing them in their full humanity. Um, I mean, I know you know that, but I
Yeah.
always just think about that
Hmm.
because I think we sometimes think everything has like a very simple solution. You're like, no, right? But it doesn't because, and then on top of that, right, we have the historical and systemic structures
Yeah.
in our society that are in place that are also influencing um, those things, whether we know them or not.
Yeah. The isms, the phobias. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All
Yeah.
of those. Mm-hmm. The the privilege,
Mhm.
unearned or earned, right? Like all of those things. Oh my gosh. Okay. So as we think about the work you do at Project 2043, I know we've talked about this a little bit, but you have a very specific philosophy that, again, just speaks to my heart. I feel like we're just kindred spirits here. Oh, like for real. I just, you know what? That is my favorite thing. Is just finding, and I think this is really important. This is not what I was about to say, but this is squirrel. Like community
Yes.
and in this work, like finding community and finding people that you can connect with and engage with this work with, right? So I think that the community you live in, but then also how you build the community around you to grow as a person in this work. So that just made me think about that, right? Like, because you know, like,
Yeah.
and being open to finding this community, right? So
Yeah.
I just think that's really important. And I share that because, I didn't know Julie till just audience. I just want you to know. I didn't know her till I went to one of her sessions and then I walked up to her and just introduced herself. So again, go out on a limb and there's the fruit. So here we are talking, go on a limb saying, come be on my podcast, Julie. Okay, but for real, I feel like we're kindred spirits. You have a really great philosophy at Project 2043, the learn, grow, act.
Mhm.
And one, I think it just takes care of all the things. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, like, it's interesting when I was coming up with, you know, how I wanted to encapsulate the work that we do, or not even the work that we do, but how we support the people we engage with. It came to, I mean, it was near instantaneous. Um, Learn, grow, act. And it's because, and I'm sure you've been in this experience too. You meet someone, you meet an organization, and they know there's a challenge, and they're already talking about what they're going to do about it. And you're like, hold up, do we hold up? Do we actually know why this challenge exists? Right?
Yeah.
Have we unpacked anything to see how we got to where we are, or why we're here, why we haven't changed since whenever, And so I like to take folks on a journey of what I call learn, grow, act, because so many times what I have found is that people will rush to take an action and then later realize it's actually not the right action or the most effective action, or they should have talked to the people who are already doing the action to see what they were up to, right? And so,
Yes.
and I feel like in many ways it's informed by Dr. Barbara J. Love's liberatory consciousness framework, where she has the 4 A's: awareness, analysis, action, and accountable allyship. So she takes it actually a step further, where you're not, and this is more so for social justice, where it's not just action, but now how are you going to be an accountable ally? And so,
Mm-hmm.
for me in the work that we do, we guide people along a journey of learning so we can understand why we're even talking about this, why
Yeah.
and then we can grow together, so we can start to expand our lens and how we see things. We can expand our awareness. We can understand problems or challenges at a deeper level. And then we can say, all right, so now given all this, what are some of those things that we could do that would help us get to the transformation we're seeking? And that I find is a far more effective, long-lasting approach than the just let's jump in and do something by Friday. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. That goes back to the why, right? When people don't know why an action is happening and it feels it just feels disconnected and disjointed, and um they're not on board. And
Mm-hmm.
then, you know, you only have a very small percentage trying to make the action happen,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then you're trying to like pull these people along, right? And it makes it harder when
Yeah.
you go out of order.
Yeah.
And then you end up abandoning it, right? They're like, "Oh, well that didn't work. We've tried," and I feel like that's what happens. And then you can get, oh, what's the word I'm looking for? Like I feel like in the organization people can be like, "Oh, we've done this before."
Yes.
Right? Some apathy
Yeah.
around whatever it is you're trying to do when you do it out of order.
Yeah.
So I
I like
really
to.
go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say one thing I often say is a lot of people come to this work in the same way that like going to a movie and you're 45 minutes late and you're looking at the screen and you're like, why are these people mad? Why are these people over here? And all you know is where you are in the moment. So you just, well, I think, they're right. And it's like, actually, we don't know how this thing started. So let's pause and really understand how we got here. That way we can, better understand what's going to take for us to truly be inclusive and equitable to move forward. We have to understand how things started. I think it's just really important. So, yeah. And I think doing that can help. And I've seen it help to reduce we've done this before because now we understand, oh, wait a minute. Okay, this is what we're actually solving for. This is what we're actually trying to, it gives so much greater context when
Yeah.
people have they can start from the beginning of the movie.
Oh, absolutely. That awareness. It always starts with awareness,
Mm-hmm.
everyone.
It was.
Starts with awareness. And I'm just going to do a little plug. I actually have a free resource you can download around awareness so you can get started.
Yeah. Go get it. Go get
Go
it.
get it. Go get it. Okay. All right, Julie. And yes, and you all, by the way, you need to go check out the show notes because I'm going to link to all of Julie's connections and you can go get connected with Project 2043 to get your organization on track. But Julie, it has been such a pleasure talking with you today. And I usually like to try to end our conversation with some, next steps, a tip for people that are looking to do this work. So what would be your tip or advice?
So I would offer two tips. One, I would say you can join our newsletter because we do talk about these things on a monthly basis. So we share resources that we've been reading, watching, and listening to, which I think people find really helpful. The other tip I would say, if you're looking to create a more inclusive space, it's something you said earlier about community.
Mm-hmm.
And I always encourage people to expand where they're getting information from. So if you look at your social media diet, not on social media, your news diet, like wherever you're getting your information from, I
Mm-hmm.
would encourage people to look for contributors with identities that they don't typically follow. Whether it is a trans journalist, whether it is someone from a rural community, whether it is, someone from a different background, but to really be open to hearing the voices of people in communities that you're not a part of, I think can really help us as we think to be more inclusive, because the more we can understand our different stories and different perspectives, I think that can help us, bite-sized steps, right? To
Yeah.
be more inclusive in a more intentional way.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Getting a variety of perspectives. Well, Julie, it has been such a pleasure talking with you today. And listeners, I'm going to need you to go to the show notes so you can download the awareness resource. You can click the link and sign up for Julye's newsletter so you can find out all the things and help grow your understanding. And it was such a pleasure, everyone, talking to you, Julye, and I will talk to you all soon. Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye.
This wraps up another episode of the Equity Hour podcast with me, your host, Dr. Tami Dean. Make sure to check out the show notes for any resources, links, and next steps from today's episode. Head on over to Instagram and give us a follow at Dragonfly Rising LLC for more tips, resources, and opportunities to connect. Thank you so much for joining us. And remember, intent is not enough. Action is necessary. How will you use your voice today?